back, folks, to the WP Tonic Roundtable show. We record this live every Friday, 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. You can join us on the WP Tonic Facebook page if you want to watch this live. This is episode 570. We've got a small but powerful panel of wise WordPress community members. Well, a couple of them are. I'm not sure about me, but there we go. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. First, the wizard, JJ. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, my name's John Jacoby, WordPress core contributor. Work at Sandhills Development largely on Sugar Calendar, and our latest coolest thing is Easy Digital Downloads 3.0 is in beta, right? It's pretty awesome. So happy to be here, guys. Good to see you again.
Oh, great. And I've got a friend of the show, Vito. Vito.
How you doing? Good to be here. Vito, the founder of Atarim, previously WP Feedback, which is a management platform for web design agencies and freelancers.
I think your Zoom's tired. I think you've been on it all day. You're breaking up a little bit. Hopefully the bandwidth will improve. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Spencer Foreman from LaunchFlows.com.
That's great. Before we go into the main stories of the week, WordPress and tech related, I want to mention our great main sponsor. That's Kinsta. Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta is only a WordPress hosting provider. If you've got a membership site, a WooCommerce site for yourself or for a client, you need really good hosting, and that's what you get from Kinsta Hosting. So I suggest that you go over, have a look at their plans. All their hosting is on Google Cloud. They provide the most modern development environments that you could look for at the present moment when it comes to WordPress. Great company, great support, great ethics. I'm sure you're going to be happy with your website or your client's website with Kinsta. So go over, have a look at their packages. If you like any of them, I'm sure you're going to buy them. And if you do that, and I suggest that you do, please tell Kinsta that you heard about them on the WP Tonic show. It helps Kinsta and it really does support the show. So on to the first story. WordPress search trends for 2020. Amazing for WooCommerce, good for plugins, but bad for themes. What did you think of this one, Spencer?
You know what I love? I love whenever we get these posts that are factually based. And although the graphs of, somebody like the SEO guy are wonderful, here it's more like just showing the search results and the actual, data. So it's nice because intuitively, I felt this way anyway. I'm not saying I'm the authority, but intuitively it felt like, look, we talk about all the time. Themes are the layer of WordPress that were one point really revolutionary and moved us from raw coding into something, but themes are dead. They've been dead for some time, and the page builders really rule. And when we have this, well, you shake your head because we have this debate whether, a block theme is a theme. I don't really think it is. I think the block theme is like a page.
No, it's not really that. It's not. It's a little bit more than that. I think for a power user implementer, what you're saying is probably true. I think for a bog standard website up business owner who's looking to get something up, having a decent framework, i.e. a theme, is still pretty important. That's where we diverge, Spencer.
I would say if we consider that we agree on the same thing, let me use a different metaphor. You have a kitchen with a bunch of drawers. In the old days, you had one drawer. It was your theme drawer. And then now there's another drawer that's your page builder drawer. And then there's another one, which is the block editor drawer. And there's another one that's the accessory plugin for your page builder that mixes inside of your plugin thing. So there's too many drawers. And what I'm saying is I think that this gives some evidence that we can get rid of the theme drawer, and maybe there'll be at some point a way to remove the layer of requiring a theme, which you now require. I mean, there has to be a placeholder to hold just the basic functionality of the template hierarchy. If we can move beyond that, and maybe it comes into the core or something, I think it'll simplify for a lot of people what is right now. Where did I leave my pizza cutter? Which drawer is it in? And you're spending all this time looking for the component. Where is it? The page builder, the theme, is the block editor? Where is it? If we just make it all one streamlined thing. As far as WooCommerce, though, My bets are on the WooCommerce because that's the foundation. I like to call it the transactional engine of every WordPress site. I don't care if you're not even selling anything. Using the feature set of WooCommerce means, and again, tips off to like Pippin and John, I mean, maybe EDD provides the same thing, especially in your 3.0. But having the functionality of WooCommerce right now allows you to do things that otherwise require at least a dozen other snippets and plugins and so forth. Onboarding, registration, my account area, doing the remembering with JavaScript if somebody filled out a field, introducing marketing automation tags and so forth. People get really surprised when I consult with them that it's so much power in a free plugin. But at the end of the day, that's really where I make my bread and butter, is off of start the stack with, let's be honest, WooCommerce. And maybe there'll be another one that does the same. And everything else thereafter becomes a piece of cake because you're not starting off with some random plugin. And by the way, today was a good example because I'm a little bit perturbed because I try to stay out of social media. But like, there are those who feel that things like another plugin, like a Thrivecart or something, does the same as WooCommerce. And I argue, I'm not here to tell anybody what to use, but objectively and factually, WooCommerce is the #1 plugin in the WordPress ecosystem. And it's probably the most, gets the most attention, developer attention, and otherwise. Everything connects to it. And for that reason alone, it's different than a Thrivecart.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And listening to Matt Medea's interview, Matt Malweg, a few weeks ago, one of the key points of that interview was how important Automatic sees WooCommerce as a growth engine for the whole of the WordPress ecosystem. That was quite clear, wasn't it? So, JJ, what did you think of this article?
I mean, it's not surprising. I agree and disagree with Spencer a little bit, but for the most part, I think we're on the same page. I know a lot of people are sort of, they are predicting the death of themes, but I have a hard time imagining how it was really going to look. I don't think that that the world is going to be ready for a long time for there to be everything to be block based, and for the permalink structure, for URL structures to go away, for people to forget that they have to theme what an archive of products looks like versus an account page versus anything else. I think that there's a lot of old web stuff that's in WordPress that's going to take a long time to disappear, and there's the future of a full site editing theme. It introduces a bunch more problems that are yet unsolved, and so there's a long runway where themes are still going to be things, and they're going to be the way that we work on WordPress for a while. There's cutting edge stuff going on there, but that people will take advantage of. But I don't see themes going there. Maybe they're not as popular, maybe they're not going up, and the trend is that they're going downwards. But the WooCommerce one wasn't that surprising to me. What was surprising to me, looking at the post that we're talking about, was how many results that AMP had. I know that that's like a thing that a lot of people care about, and I guess, but like seeing the keywords for AMP plugin is on this was, it's just a piece of tech that I don't think is that awesome. So
there also could be some pent up demand, couldn't there? Because there could be a lot of people, because of the fundamental changes over the past year with Gutenberg, and it's a constant. People just think, I won't change theme. I leave it a bit longer, and I just see if some more how this Gutenberg thing is going. Do you think I might have some track right about that, or am I totally off?
No, I think so. I think the number of people looking for WordPress and React makes sense. I think WordPress pop-up being as high as it was. I mean, these are all things that like I can imagine that people want and that they're looking for, but the search terms and the results are it kind of goes to it proves how potentially out of touch I am with some things and not others, because these are things that I don't look, not at all, not a single time. All of last year, I didn't search for AMP plugin or WordPress pop-up a single time in my life, right? So there were some surprising results on here. But Spencer, you're entirely right, and listening to the Max's conversation that WooCommerce is like, it has secured itself years ago and has confirmed itself this year as like the biggest deal in WordPress for the foreseeable future.
I was going to say that, things sneak up on you, right? And I don't think we disagree at all, other than, some of the organizational things about themes are obviously still way in flux. But with regard to things like AMP, I had an argument with one of my clients, but close friend clients, because I suggested to him that things like AMP are artificially created, almost like politicians making tariffs. They're there to interfere with the natural order of things, because there was no need for AMP, and it's proven to be completely bogus. And yet they've sold it as both the panacea to all ills, as well as an emergency mandate that if you don't have it, the earth is going to stop turning or something. And it's never proven. But we see a difference in the WordPress ecosystem for one good reason. And this is where, again, I always think of John with his SEO background. But the idea is, if you look at a platform that has a solution, Shopify or, Kartra, Kajabi, and so forth, even a CRM, they give you 10 features. You take what you get, and you compare the outcome of what you pay against what they give you, and you say, yeah, it's good, bad, I love it, hate it, but you accept it, right? It's like dating somebody who isn't perfect, like all of us. You go, I love them for all their best things, but I don't think about the bad things. I can't change it. Whereas in WordPress, the problem is, especially with people that don't spend money, they can do anything, anytime to everything that's in the ecosystem, including like a major plugin like a WordPress and so forth. And so whereas AMP is able to jam down your throat, look, we are the gatekeepers and you use AMP or it's all going to be over. Nobody could get away with that in WordPress and say, if you don't use WooCommerce, everything's going to come to an end. And so what happens is you get 6 people say WooCommerce is best, and 2 people say this is best. And then, you got to put this thing on top. And we have started to evolve, but like that potluck dinner, everybody bring what they want, is now it's starting to, kind of streamline into, here's a core set of things that everybody agrees upon. And I think a lot of people agree on WooCommerce as one of them. And I hope over time that'll bleed into the themes and page builders, because the end will be a better outcome. If WooCommerce and the stack of stuff was like a ready to use offering, like if there was WordPress ready to go version, and it was a platform, and I know people are talking about it, but like an established, this is the one to use. I think it would be interesting to see how many people would choose that, regardless of who hosted it, versus the everything under the sun. And as long as the allure is there of people being able to change it, it won't work. But if somebody had to say, take this or nothing, it'd be fascinating to see how many people would benefit from that and choose it versus the alternative.
Right. So what do you reckon, Vito?
To continue on what Spencer just said, there are some companies that are trying to do this right now. The WAS model is growing massively, which is basically the same concept. But I don't see any alternative to WooCommerce. So they have like the biggest monopoly in the space when it comes to any plugin category that is out there. You can't do without. If you want to sell something, what are you going to do? You really have no other choice. So that coupled with COVID, when a lot of people had to go online to start selling what they were selling through brick and mortar shops, I can definitely see why WooCommerce was growing. And I'm sure you've seen that as well with your plugins. I also have a couple of Woo plugins that were thriving this year compared to previous years. And so that is like that was really expected, that WooCommerce is gonna be reigning, on top of everything else. What I found really interesting about this article is WordPress React as one of the top 5 searches that Alex mentioned on this blog post. And if we're looking into the conversation about the themes, I think that this might be a place for themes to really up their game, if you will. Creating those React-based themes that are like super fast compared to to the standard stuff that is out there, like the PHP HTML front end kind of base. So there could be a rise, like another round of themes, if that is the trend for what people are searching for. Like Gutenberg is powered by React in the backend, but that's not what it churns out eventually on the front end. So until it does, maybe there's room there if this is one of the top 5 searches in the industry. Another thing that I found really interesting is WordPress CRM. Because, well, pop-up, fine. Everyone is always looking for the perfect pop-up plugin. I haven't found one yet. But when it comes to having a CRM all built into WordPress, especially with a database that is like 25, 30 years old, that is really interesting to see that this is the trend that people are going for, as opposed to taking all of this data offsite. Not only that it's a concern with the infrastructure, but it's also a concern from security point of view. It's also a concern from a speed, from the UI that is super outdated, when it comes to the backend. So I'm really wondering why that is like number 3 out of those searches, and what do people expect to see when they search for this? Let's see. I'm gonna search while you continue and see what I get when I do WordPress CRM.
Right, that's great. Let's go on to story 2. Facebook blocks news in Australia over government's payment rules. So, Spencer, would you like to give us a brief summary what this story is about?
I mean, essentially, I like Australia and New Zealand for their ability to do unique things.
By the way,
Australia, I think it's Australia.
You're looking for WordPress.
This is Australia, but I'm saying I like the fact that they're islands, and so they can do what they want. They have certain sensibility that mainland countries can't necessarily do. So essentially what happened was they decided that Australian users and publishers will not be able, they wanted to make Facebook and the other social media giants pay whenever content from one of their publishers was shared or posted. And apparently Google said yes, and Facebook said no way. And so essentially what happened is Facebook has now removed all content from these publishers. And I'm not really sure, quite frankly, from this article, how it works if somebody shares a link to, an Australian company, but apparently they have some algorithm in place that, at least for the official postings, it's not going to work unless they get paid. And I find it fascinating because, again, back to the social media construct, there's something wrong in a world where half the people have completely at their throats, disagreements of opinion. And look at the two tech giants. One says I'll pay, one says I don't. And in the middle is this little island going, haha, look at what we've done.
Well, it's a continent, actually. It's a continent.
It's a continent, but like given the number of people living there, the volume of people, it's a lot of, it's a lot of weight for a small number of people. I mean, I don't know what the population is, but it's about
I think it's around 39 million.
Right, 39 million people. That's like this 2 states in the United States,
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I think California has 42 million. So yeah, I understand. Yeah, I've been pernickety there, but it is a continent that actually we've got to get our facts right. But JJ, what did you reckon? But thank you for that summary, Spencer. What do you reckon about it?
Who's shocked that Facebook does the dumb wrong thing? I just
it's just the way they do things, isn't it?
That's all I have to say about it.
It's as subtle as a brick in the face, isn't it?
God, it just, and that's when we talk about WordPress and React, that's the one thing that I always still can't get over, is that React is like a Facebook shepherded project, and like I just nothing good comes from Facebook, including
like getting dirty,
right?
don't you?
it really is a thing that I have a hard time accepting, and that's all I have to say about it. You can't say something nice, don't say it at all, right? So that's all I've got to say on Facebook.
I have something nice to say. So we had a conversation. I think it was here like months ago with Google trying to do the same thing by basically listing most of the article right directly on the search result, therefore allowing people to avoid clicking through, right? So people lost traffic because of that. So I don't think that this is the case here. And what Google did back then is that they just stopped it. So they didn't list the entire article on the search results, so that they just gave you a bit of highlights or something like that. But you had to go in to the website so that the website can gain the traffic, can gain the the attention, can gain the cookie and all of the stuff that come along with someone visiting your website. But I think that Facebook are not in the wrong here because Facebook is a publishing platform it's a distribution platform. So when you're distributing content, you need Facebook. You want Facebook. This is a way to increase your reach to a larger audience through a platform that already gathered a few billion people for you. This is why we talked about this for 1 minute before this call. This is a huge reason why we're all on Facebook. We have products and we have communities, and we want to engage with our communities over there and eventually drive them back to our websites for whatever reason, right? And that was the same when I was doing my music, and that's the same now that I have a product. That was the same with when I was an agency selling services, selling Facebook-related services to small businesses. So they kind of, like the authorities in Australia kind of flipped the concept on its head, not understanding what Facebook is about. It's not a place to publish content, and it's not that they're copying the entire blog post over there. It's a place where you drop a link, get reach, and get traffic. And then it's up to to those publications to do whatever they need to do with this traffic. Like when
I think on reflection, I think you're spot on there, Vito. It shows a lack of, actually compared to Google. Yes, Google, to some degree have built their business on nicking other people's content, really, haven't they?
That's not cool.
But Facebook's model, for once, I think you're probably right, Facebook. So it's really surprising how they reacted. It's the way they reacted.
Because I think that they believe they are right. They believe they are right, and I think they're right. If you really think about it from like what is the use case of each one of those platforms, the publishers and the promoters. Facebook is the promoter part of this thing. So they just said, all right, you don't want our traffic? No problem. You don't get our traffic. A lot, users are outraged by it, and that I get because it affects the end user at the end of the day, wanting to share information and wanting to share news with their friends and their circles. But the publishers need to back down, not Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
But didn't Facebook, didn't they block a bunch of stuff like news and weather and sports and stuff that's just regular people things that they just blanket banned a bunch of stuff too. So there are some things that
under this debacle.
Is it clear how they're going to ban the stuff that's shared by a private person? I mean, are they going to be able to block a link to whatever in Australia?
We try to share a link when you're in Australia. It just gives you a notice that you can't. And even if you're using all kinds of virtual, you can't. They kind of.
All I can say,
unavailable kind of thing.
All I can say to wrap it up, Vito. All I can say, Vito, to wrap it up is, I do think you really got a point there. But I really would advise Facebook. I don't know if you know any Australians living in, because when I was living in London, I knew a lot of Australians. They're choosing the wrong crowd to piss off, basically. I know Australians.
but it's not it's like the end user just got caught in the middle. The battle here is between two giants, you know, Facebook and traditional media. That this is the battle, you know.
Yeah, I think we're going to go for a break. We're coming back. We've got some other great stories. Be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. And we've had a good discussion, a small panel, but a powerful panel. I've enjoyed the discussion so far. Before we go on to the other stories, I want to tell you about a webinar me and Spencer Forum are doing on the 12th of March at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. It's going to be all about marketing automation with an emphasis on learning management systems. If you've got a membership site or you're making a membership site for a client, you need to understand the new way of using some fundamental free tools or inexpensive tools to totally automate some of the processes when it comes to a membership website. And we're going to be talking about all the leading tools. Spencer's going to be opening the cupboard, getting the foodstuffs out, and we're going to be making a delicious automation dish right in front of you. And the main reason you want to join us because you'll be able to ask Spencer some questions and myself. So how do you join? Well, you just go to the WP-Tonic website. Right on the top navigation, there's a button that says webinar, and then you just sign up and you'll be able to join us for this fabulous free webinar. Please do. So on to the next story. I think I'm going to change the order, actually. I'm going to go for story 5 because we got Vito with us. So I'm going to make I'm sorry, Vito. I'm going to butcher the renaming here. W3 feedback.
Rebrands, right?
To Atarim moves to a full SaaS model. I'm sorry, how do you pronounce it, Vito? I apologize.
First of all, I pronounce it some way. Atarim means websites in Hebrew, which is my native language. And that is what I was going for. But I don't want to force the pronunciation because no one, like in the English language, there is no emphasis on the end of the word. So Atarim doesn't exist in English. So probably I already hear people calling Atarim, Atarim, and eventually it's going to balance somewhere. And I'm cool with that, you know, as long as people say the name, I'm good.
Right. You know, the Wisconsin person in me wants to say Atarim.
Yeah,
like
that's
cool. I
was tempted, but I knew that was
Atarim.
Same with
I
me.
was very tempted, JJ, but I knew that was incorrect, so I didn't know what to do.
Me
really.
Too.
All right. So, well, you know, you're the CEO. Why the rebranding, and why have you moved to a SaaS model?
So we were basically a SaaS company since the end of 2019. We launched the product in mid-19, and by October, we were already a SaaS product by launching our SaaS-based, our cloud-based dashboard that allowed people to use multiple plugins on multiple, like the plugin installed on multiple websites and all bundled into the centralized dashboard. This transition has kind of solidified that because people were considering us a plugin throughout the whole thing, and as well as considering us a feedback tool. So we started as a standalone plugin for WordPress, for feedback, for WP feedback. But really quickly, we realized that we can do a whole lot more to help our users and to help the industry. And the product just kept expanding and expanding way beyond that with product management features, time tracking, logins, kind of redundancies, image optimizations, all kinds of stuff that has nothing to do with team management and internal communications, all of those kind of stuff. And it went way beyond just being like stickers on a website as we started, as version 1.0 was. But the name implied to everyone that it was still like that. And so we were being compared to products that, like, in my opinion, like, products that are just stayed there. while we kind of moved on. And I wanted to be considered in the same breath with Zendesk, with Asana, with Trello, with
Basecamp,
with Basecamp, those kind of tools, instead of being considered as as an add-on essentially. And also the cost of running a SaaS is completely different. So if you're considered a plugin, but you're paying the price of being a SaaS, then the model really it doesn't look well for the future. So we had to kind of make a transition that was so clear cut that would allow me to come on shows like this and tell the story and kind of change the way that people perceive the product, even though it was really a SaaS for more than a year now.
Well, there you go. What do you reckon, Spencer?
I think it's an interesting thing because a lot of plugins in the space have tried to do sort of a SaaS type of model, but the nature of what I see, Vito's product do probably works better as a SaaS anyway, because the thing is, this is nothing to do with this specific thing, but there's an own axiom. It's better to have like a very, very niche market and a very specific solution for it than to try to like please everybody with everything. And not everyone needs this plugin, but I think from the evidence I've seen, it was a good move just because you're able to better serve the needs of the people who need that type of a service. And the other part, which you just alluded to, and I agree, is that if you have no product and you're a consultant, you're looked at it one way. If you're a consultant with a product that's a plugin, you're looked at it another way. If you're a consultant that has a product and a SaaS service, you're looked at in a even more positive way, differently. So I think if nothing else, it gives you guys that credibility as well as the capability to move outward. On the other hand, you definitely have the burden now of the overhead and so forth of running something that isn't just like do a download of the zip and good luck to you.
I agree, but I don't shy away from that responsibility. We haven't from the beginning, because I think that this is the right thing for the user, and this is what's kind of led me to that decision. The plugin was designed as a tool for us, for my own agency. We just installed it on websites, and it worked great. And so that's what we brought to the market. But really, when you think about this, and like when we were kind of rolling this out, and people were leaving like 30, 50, 100 comments or tasks on a website, fine, the website can take it. But now, 2 years in, some websites have 2,000, 3,000 tasks. Every task has 5 comments, and you can imagine what that does to a database. Right, exactly. So now everything is done through APIs. Everything is offloaded to a place that can actually handle that. We built the whole thing with Laravel and React. We were talking about React before. And the plugin is still there because it allows us to integrate into the WordPress website in a much deeper level than just throwing in a script. But we even changed the name of the plugin to the client interface plugin, and we changed the name of the dashboard to the agency dashboard to allow our users to really understand the differentiation that the client needs to work on the website. That's what they paid for. That's what they bought. That's what they need to face. That's what they need to get used to using, because a lot of us as an industry, a lot of times take the client away from what they paid for, while the agency should not be logging into every single website in the morning when you have 30, 40, 50, 200 websites. You have to have a centralized environment that will allow you to kind of jump in, jump out, jump in, jump out. That's the mindset.
Yeah. So what do you reckon, JJ?
I think that this is like a really good example of the type of WordPress plugin that like needed to evolve into being a SaaS. Like, I think the separation, like you said, Vito, like it is a natural type of separation that feels correct. Like if everything lived inside of WP admin, you end up with an audience of people that don't necessarily need to be logging into a WordPress dashboard all day, every day, right? Like having them have a dedicated interface and a place to go to do that kind of work is just a better experience for them. And so Like it, and I think that it's smart to learn that early and then see that early and then pivot real quick, because you could easily be stuck working inside of WP admin for the foreseeable future and continue to go down the wrong path and end up in a completely different, potentially like unsuccessful business model because you've made decisions early on or commitments early on that you stuck to. So good for you guys for making that change right away.
I think I'll be re-looking at it myself actually, but I think you've made a really smart move here and the right move.
Thanks,
and I think it bodes well for you and the company's future. I know doing something like this isn't easy, but
it wasn't easy.
but I think in the long term it will pay big dividends. So on to story 4, and I'm having some problems with pronouncing my pronunciation. I apologise, listeners and viewers. How do you pronounce this, Spencer? Edgenuity?
Edgenuity?
Edgenuity. Software.
This is a very badly named company.
Software
wasn't. By the way, like as a side note, because it's interesting, and to Vito's comment about Atarim, right? So there's a lot of famous cases in American marketing where products were chosen without reference to their, geographic sales market, like the Nova, the Nova in Chevrolet. Nova means doesn't run. And when they tried to sell it in Mexico, that went over like a Led Zeppelin. So also when it comes to the name and the pronunciation, it should be easy to say, easy to spell, easy to understand when somebody says it to you or when you read it. And in this case, Edgenuity could be the worst possible combination of words ever. Atarim is fine, but what I would say, not that you need my advice, do one of those things after your name with like the ellipses and like phonetically, Atarim, like EEM.
So I don't want to force it really because it's not like you're saying. If I'm going to try and I made that mistake with WP feedback, and my like some of my days were like just sending out emails telling people you have to capitalize the B on feedback. Capitalize the B. You need to capitalize the B. Yeah, just capitalize the B.
Well,
yeah.
Here's a test. I'm going to ask you guys 2 company names. Tell me the company that connects things that are SaaS companies starts with a Z, Zapier. How do you guys say it?
That's Zapier.
How do you say it?
I would say Zapier. Yeah.
Zapier.
Is it Zapier or Zapier? I think it's supposed to be Zapier because they say Zaps. I don't think you say Zapes.
Zaps.
I don't know why I say Zapier. Yeah.
I think somebody once said that their original, like Zapier makes you happier.
Well, okay. It's striking, but I don't know if Spencer's trying to indicate that the story. I thought the story was reasonably. So, could you recap for the listeners and viewers, Spencer? I'm just checking you've done your homework. See, what this? It's a long article, so I don't expect you, but I thought it was quite interesting. What did you get from it, Spencer?
I mean, it's very simple. School districts are in chaos with the pandemic. I have 3 school-age kids. One's in college, 2 are in regular school. Well, one's in high school, one's in grammar school. And the one in grammar school in particular, they gave us the option of like remote learning or some hybrid thing. And the bottom line was that for those in remote learning, they actually do, thankfully, our school district have the teachers with smaller groups of kids on Zoom. These school districts, not having the budget or the time or the technology or whatever, were like, hey, let's find some cool software. And it lets these younger kids watch 8 hours of video and then have to take tests without any human intervention. The problem, besides the fact that the kids are just watching mindless videos that my high schooler sometimes has to do too, is that then it's giving grades that are not correct based upon the responses of the kids. And so some kid who's diligently watching the zombie teacher for 8 hours then gets a 0 on the exam that they knew all the right answers. And the parents shit their pants because this is ridiculous. And here's the problem. The educators that run the school districts, and I speak from personal experience, very smart people in their own right, in their own fields, know zero about what's going on with the software. It was a Band-Aid in an emergency. So there's no accountability because the software makers aren't going to go, yeah, our software, is broken. And there's no, like, it's kind of like trying to get, the Gutenberg interface fixed. It's like scream it forever, and maybe in a couple decades something will change. But in the meantime, nobody's doing anything to fix it, and the school districts are stuck with their budgetary commitment. So kids suffer.
So what do you reckon, JJ? What do you reckon?
In a lot of ways, this type of problem was inevitable, right? Like all of the perfect storm of the tech that we're working towards, plus the state of the world that we're in, was like some company like this was going to emerge, and they were going to do it wrong with AI. And then kids were going to suffer as a result. And like school districts were going to have egg on their face for like scrambling and like trying to make the right decision, like trying to find a way to like keep parents happy, keep kids happy. Like this story was going to happen. And I think that it's really sad that it did. Like we're in the process locally in our village of going through a referendum because of some state funding formulas and things that the state of Wisconsin has decided decades ago. And so school referendums are a way of life for our small school district. And we continue to reinvest and invest over and over again every 5, 10, 20 years in order to keep our public schools afloat and keep real teachers in the rooms and keep school lunch programs running and going well and paying off lunch debt. What a dumb thing. Like there's just so much stuff that our public schools get stuck with and get the raw deal of. And you think that the people at a company like Edgenuity were trying to do the right thing. They thought that they were onto something. They were probably smart people, and they felt really good about the problems they were solving. And then come to find out that at scale for this kind of thing, it completely woefully embarrassingly inadequate, right? Like so.
Yeah, I was in really two minds to actually have this story because I think it's quite regrettable. But we must understand. I actually think a much more hybrid model of education is the future, or just like work, where I do feel that you do, like in work, you do need events or maybe one day a week, whatever the culture of the company, or retreats. You do need to get everybody together to build kind of company culture. But the idea that you need to have to go into an office for a lot of work, 9 to 5, and have to commute every day, is, I consider, unless it's like in the medical industry to some, but even that, you're having a lot of companies now where you can see a doctor, but it's remote. Even that area is being touched by technology. But the idea that you have to go in 5 days a week into office and spend over an hour of your life, 2 hours a day plus commuting, is ridiculous, isn't it? And I think the same thing should apply to education. The idea that a child has to go into school and every day of the week, it's obvious to me that technology is going to be involved in teaching children to a much higher level, and artificial intelligence is going to be part of that. So it's a bit, but it's just early days. What do you reckon, Vito? Am I just waffling, or did I pick up some key points here?
Yeah, like what was interesting here is just how the student was saying, my teacher, a robot is my teacher, right? So that is not how it's supposed to be, I think. So like instead of during the worst time in recent history to make a transition, they went too far. right? So instead of trying to create human interaction within a world that lacks human interaction because everyone is working remote, they just wanted the whole shebang. They just went like to the other extreme, not having a teacher at all. So you can't ask questions, you can get feedback on what you were discussing and so on. So I'm sure the app developers are after this came out on NBC here, or I'm sure in other places, they're working extra hours to fix that.
Right.
And it will be fine eventually. But the schools that made that decision, I think that is the kind of that was just a weird decision to make. Like when I know that this demographic of people that in most of their lives they're standing in front of kids, that's and they look at pieces of paper in most of their day. Then to take them into the world of AI and expect it all to go without a hitch, that was just crazy.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was great insights. Thanks for that. So what's we doing the time? Let's quickly go with a last story probably. WordPress contributors discuss scaling back releases to 4 major releases is not a viable plan for 2021. I had to laugh when I read this, JJ, because this is oscillating. This has been one of those things. If you've been involved in the WordPress community any substantial time, this question of releases and how releases should be managed has been an ongoing debate, and it like every few years it just changes, doesn't it?
I talked to Joseph about this a little bit just the other day, actually, because we hadn't chatted in a while. So the Tavern comments or highlights Ryan McHugh's response, I think, the most. And I've known Ryan for a long time. We generally are pretty like-minded. So I think his point about predictability really is the most important part of setting expectations about the number of WordPress releases that there are. Like if we're going to try to set an expectation, then the people do plan around that, especially with WordPress and as large as it is, and for as many people and the economy behind it, as many people that work with it and on it that do know that if the expectation has been set, that I think at that point now it is a social problem, it is a people problem to try and scale the tasks back to fit the schedule than it is to try and adapt the schedule to fit the engineering problems that there are at hand. And you're right that the schedule over the course of years is 2 releases, 3 releases, 4 releases, 1 release a year. There was one year where no releases happened way back in the early days. It is gone all over the place. But when you set the expectation early on that this is what's going to happen, that not that it shouldn't be changeable or shouldn't be adaptable, or that we all should figure it out. We're all smart and flexible, so we can do it, right? But I think it is a complex problem because it starts to intersect with the contributors that WordPress core has, the committers that WordPress core has, the amount of energy and focus that could go into iterating and working on WordPress itself. And it is a people problem of them getting burned out and working too hard, working too many hours, too much pressure on them to commit, I mean, no pun intended, to working on an open source project. And so there's a lot of variables, but it is a bummer to have to backpedal and force everyone around the sort of the blast radius of a change like this to have to get out of the way and rearrange their lives to figure out what the release schedule may or may not be for them. We plan around it at Sandhills for releases for our software, because we know that there are changes that are going to happen in the WordPress dashboard or APIs and things we're going to have to deprecate. And we keep an eye on that. And so if all of a sudden something we were planning for June of 2021 isn't happening in June of 2021, we have to rearrange things. And that means we spend a day replanning, or 2 or a week trying to figure out how to reallocate stuff. And like we're not the only ones. There's a lot of people that do that. So, but at the same time, I completely understand and have nothing but empathy for overworked people working for free-ish on open source software.
Yeah, I think you know, unfortunately, because it's the end story, but we'll be touching. I'm sure we will be touching this again. I think that you just highlight a key problem here. Your last sentence, your last statement, having people, you know, that so, what do you reckon, Vito?
I would agree with you, JJ, about people working on an open source project on their downtime or their like extra hours and whatnot. I think things can be bundled up instead of doing it as 4 releases. It'd be fine. It'd be 2 releases, but not compromising on the advances. My real concern, or the way I'm looking at it, and this is kind of I'm just looking at it like someone is always chasing you, right? Because there's other platforms that are WordPress is still growing, but other platforms are always chasing and trying to be better, have more features, have more stuff out there. And so it is the responsibility of the software, of the platform, to keep evolving with technology, with the world, and respond to the market, right? Everything that changes around us. So slowing things down in a time like this, I don't think that's a good idea for any product. But I also again, I understand that challenge. So I doing WordCamps in 2019, I was investing those extra days to contribute whatever I can, but not always you want to. It's it's just Sunday, and sometimes you just want to have a drink with some friends in the lobby instead of sitting down and coding. So
guilty as charged. That's me most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thing that wasn't mentioned in this article that I want to highlight before the show is over, because we start to run out of time a little bit, is like that this is like a growing trend that isn't going to reverse itself. Like WordPress is a project, and the software projects that we take on, and Vito, maybe you can speak to this, having done some Laravel projects and React stuff, is like the code that we have to write isn't as easy as it was to write 5 or 10 years ago. Right. And onboarding contributors onto these projects is not as easy as it was years ago. You cannot just step in and write a patch and have everyone go like, cool, thanks. Like we'll totally make sure that this goes in. Like unit tests and code formatting and file names and function names and class names all have standards that need to be listened to and adhered to. It is just a more complicated project now. And so it will not move faster. It will continue to move slower, which means we have to try to have smaller incremental releases. We have to iterate more quickly and commit to 4 releases. And we have to scope those releases better, because it's not going to get easier to bring on new bodies. New people are just going to it's going to take longer, and it's going to be a harder and harder time until we can intentionally make all these things smaller. Go ahead.
So I think that actually trying to bundle this up, and I agree with what you're saying, that it takes time to get into the code. When you're doing contributor day, you can see that it takes like the 3 first hours is just talking about it, right? You don't do
right.
And then you have 2 hours left.
Right.
So and then it's over for another few months until you go to the next WordCamp. Most people didn't go to the same amount of WordCamps that I was going as a product maker. So they would contribute once a year, and then it would take 4 hours to get acquainted, and then you only have 1 hour to do stuff. So I think that taking maybe a different approach, more of a hackathon kind of approach, creating events that can bring together 100, 200, 5,000 developers for a single weekend, can push the product like crazy. Stuff Definitely. That people try to do for over 2 years can be accomplished over a weekend if you're bundling up resources. Do those 3 hours in one go to all of those 5,000 people, and then just run with it. Yeah, so maybe the model needs to change around the way that contribution is done to keep up with the speed of iteration that is happening around WordPress. You were mentioning Laravel, but not only that, you can have other CMSs profit-driven CMSs like WebFlows and Shopify and stuff like that, where there are developers that are not doing 1 hour every 6 months; they do 8 hours every single day. So something really maybe in the way that it's.
No, I thought that was a great insight. If you don't mind if I, Spencer, go into the recommendations, do you? So, all right. Thanks for that. So I'm going to go into the recommendations of the week. This one is called Ultimate Template Cloud for WordPress. It comes from a development house that's done a lot of Elementor add-ons, and they've got this cloud system where you can add templates and you can add your own library and then distribute them to clients' websites. I'm really it's a pretty new product, but I think because of the development house behind it, I think I'll be looking more into this particular product. So JJ, or let's go for Spencer. Spencer, have you got anything you want to share with the listeners and viewers that's come on your radar this week?
Yeah, I had a couple of conversations about this. It's an interesting twist on the WooCommerce situation. This company is called fast.co. I also want to comment on the fact easy to say, easy to spell, easy to remember, but it's .co, not .com, because if you go to .com, you get something else. So my fourth rule is if you're going to invest a ton of money like these people have, maybe try to lock down that .com thing first, because these guys are going to have a whole world of pain on their hands if people go to the wrong place. Nevertheless, what it does is it's conceptually a prosumer thing that chicken and the egg problem is giving people a universal app that would allow them to instantly, immediately from their phone, buy stuff from various WooCommerce merchants and so forth by way of the interface that it has. And so in other words, instead of going to the individual merchant shop and checkout experience and everything else, the merchant has to participate, but they can offer a product or something for sale that can be bought with fast. And because the person has their phone, click buy. And nothing else has to happen because all their stuff is stored with fast. So it's allegedly secure and fast and . Now, I have mixed emotions about this because chicken and the egg, this is really at the end of the day, not that much different than those virtual credit cards or from even having a debit card. What is unique is the assumption that they're going to throw a crap ton of money to get people as the consumers to install this on their phone. And only then will it be worth it, presumably, to all the merchants to add it to their checkout experience. And if they can achieve that level of ubiquitousness, then I can see it being useful. But, like there's examples of this, like Slack maybe, or, kids using whatever the latest app of the day is for, instant chatting. But it's not always the case that it happens. So this will be an interesting thing to watch. One last comment is that because I'm in the space of WooCommerce checkouts and sales funnels, 99% of what this offers as a benefit can be done right now just using WooCommerce, Elementor, and LaunchFlows. But you just have to do it on your own site as a merchant. Adding the credit card is not that big of a deal because almost everybody already has autofill on their phone anyway. So,
Well, put all your suggestions into chat. That really helps. JJ, have you got anything that you want to recommend?
I've got two quick things. One was an open source project that I forget where I got it linked to, if it came from Twitter or Reddit, but it was an open source project from NASA, since we're just watching the Mars rover do its thing yesterday. They have an open source repo called F Prime that has been around for a while, but that I just learned about, that is a flight-proven multi-platform open source flight software framework. So if you want to see how NASA flies things to space, they've got some open source code that lets you read some C++ and figure out how they do it. And then since we talked about AI earlier, specifically with Edgenuity, sort of longtime WordPress Twitter friend, Nick Duncan, who has a bunch of stuff out there, had built something called ContentBot.io. That was something to automatically generate like blog topics or product topics or things that has a way to tap into some AI and give you inspiration where maybe you're having trouble finding it on your own. So you have to punch in some keywords and it'll generate some stuff for you specifically for kind of in a WordPress context for blog posts and products.
ContentBot.io?
ContentBot.ai. I said it wrong, didn't I?
.io?
AI. Yeah, I think I said .io. ContentBot.ai.
And by the way, that's a trend, because last week we were talking, I came across a couple other ones that if you're, let's say, needing marketing advice and you don't want to hire a copywriter, things like Write Sonic and Kiwi.co. There's like a whole raft of companies now where it's like the old kids game Mad Lib. So give me a name, a topic.
It is like that.
And it goes, and it spits out really good stuff as a starting point, kind of scary.
Yeah, hey JJ, can you make sure those links are in chat for us? That would really help.
Do you guys remember the ultimate business jargon generator from way back?
I do remember that.
Flash days.
I do remember that.
During the venture capital days, you would say, "Oh, I'm going to create a company that's going to be a multi-million-dollar company." It'd be like, "Okay, give me like three words to describe your company," and then it would spit out this paragraph that describes we're a multi-dimensional corporate entity that's solving the multitude of blah blah blah. And it's
my favorite one was somebody did a Clubhouse profile generator that was like I don't know. That's the most recent one of those I saw.
You guys on Clubhouse
profile generator? I mean, I have an account, but I'm not. Yeah.
I tried it once, and it was interesting. While I was working out, I was listening to some of the bigger marketing guys, and it's like being on a party line phone call. But I wonder, I mean, it's interesting, but I wonder how much sustainable value you get out of it, other than like just hanging out with your friends. I don't know. It's hard to say. Entertaining, sure.
Yeah.
Right, Vito, have you got anything you want to share with the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, a new product, a very interesting product actually by Joshua Daly and his friend Joshua, who used to be a part of WPM Dev. And he went on his own to create a product called Infinite Uploads. What it does, it basically offloads all of your media folder over to the cloud to be hosted securely in S3 buckets and then served back through CDN. Basically, you're saving a lot of. There is no storage needed on the WordPress website, and delivering the files is much faster from on the front end. Everything is much more secure. Really cool idea. So I share the link. Infinite Uploads.
Oh, thanks so much, and listeners and viewers, all the links to all the that the panelists are recommending, you'll find in the show notes of this episode. So go to the WP-Tonic website and you'll be able to get the links for everything just mentioned. So JJ, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and your wizardry?
At Twitter, probably jjj.blog or at jjj on Twitter.
So Vito, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and your fantastic new product?
You can find Atarim on atarim.io or find me on Vito Peleg on Twitter.
And Spencer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
LaunchFlows.com, or you can go over to WPFusion.com and click the Get a Free Call if you have questions about marketing automation, WooCommerce, membership sites, and so forth.
Oh, thanks, panel. And listeners and viewers, if you want great videos, great training videos about marketing automation or a load of stuff, go to YouTube, the WP-Tonic YouTube channel, all the shows plus additional videos. I'm publishing a lot of new content recently. Join us on that channel and subscribe to it. That really would help the show as well. We'll see you next week when we have another great panel and another great show. See you soon, folks. Bye.
I got JJ to wave twice.
I just